when you look at the picture, what comes to your mind? Okay, Jainism. Okay, so now, what have we seen so far? No, in Jainism. Okay, when it comes to Jainism, what have we seen? So we have seen the 5 vows. Anything else? Okay, ascetic life. Then non-violence, etc. Okay? And therefore, we have also seen something with regards to, okay, what does this picture try to tell us? Something about what we have already done. Something about what we have already done. Referring to Jainism. Okay, harmony with nature. Good. Harmony with nature as well as enlightenment, truth, non-violence. Good. So that means all of you all, in a way, have read something. So today we'll do this small exercise called as the Y chart. Now, how many of you all are familiar with what is a Y chart? You will have heard of pie chart? Yes. Okay. Line graph. Then the bars. Okay. So this is similar to that to represent some data. But what is the difference with this Y chart is that what we do is we take one particular topic and then we look at it from 3 different perspectives. So for example, the first is looks like. So when any topic is given to you, what does it look like? For example, this table, something to do with the visual. What does the table look like? Rectangle? Okay. It has 4 legs, etc. What does it sound like? Okay. It's hard. Okay. Then how does it feel like? Very strong, heavy, etc. So in this way we see that we approach a particular topic from 3 different perspectives. First, how it appears to us visually, then how it sounds to us or what we have heard about it, and then what is our impression about it. So let's apply this to what so far we have learnt about Jainism. So in a way, what does it look like? When you have this whole aspect of Jainism now, we have just begun with it. We have learnt about Mahavira, we have learnt about the 5 vows. What comes to your mind immediately when you just glance at it? Okay, ascetic life. Can we say royal beginnings? Okay. Also looks like detachment. Peace, harmony, non-violence, okay, renunciation, okay, good. Okay, so in a way we see that royal beginnings, he was born in a royal family, okay. Then also he lived as a householder for 30 years with the family. Then he renounced everything, began to lead an ascetic life by renouncing all his worldly possessions, wearing simple clothes, etc., which indicates detachment. And then we also see that he also taught, right? So, whatever knowledge he had was also taught to others. Now, how does it feel like? Okay? For example, when you look at renunciation, for example, what does it feel like? Sacrifice, okay? So, like suppose for example, you have been studying very hard, okay, for your surprise test today, and then once the test is over, what feeling did you get? Relief, right? Okay, liberation. Okay, enlightenment. Okay, let's become a bit more serious. So, obviously, when we speak about, as we have said, it looks like renunciation. What does it feel like? Okay, it feels like a liberation, a kind of a giving up or a sacrifice, as you have said. Next, when you look at harmony, peace, what does it feel like? Keep this in mind, okay? Keep the what looks like in mind, and now go to the feeling level. What does it feel like? So when you look at harmony, when you look at okay, bliss, good. Inner joy. Tranquility, good. So in a way we see that even in his life, we have already seen, in spite of all the difficulties, challenges, there was bliss, inner peace, calmness within him. Okay, at the same time, we see that once he attained liberation, in a way he was also omniscient, right? Knowing everything. Now, in a way, when we look at non-violence or peace, what feeling does it give us? Kind of an ethical living, right? Okay, so good. So, we have seen the feeling part of it. Now, what does it sound like? What do others say about it? Okay, so now, what have you all heard so far? So far, you all have learned something. You all must have also heard from what others have been saying or have experienced something. So, how does it sound like? What does Jainism sound like for you all? Okay, ascetic life comes again. Can we say teachings of non-attachment? Okay, then also last class we read something, right? Okay, the 5 great vows. Which are they? You have non-violence, truth, non-possessiveness, okay. Now, what else does it sound like? When we look at, we have already seen Buddhism now, we are looking at Jainism. So, what have these great founders or great men done? After getting enlightenment, what they have done? They have shared their knowledge. Or they have taught others. Okay, and this teaching has been by giving guidance as well as through sermons. Okay, and then we can also speak about compassion or compassionate leadership. Okay, that means inspiring followers to also have compassion and following non-violent principles in life. So this is in a way a kind of a summary. So keep this in mind. This will become a kind of a regular feature which will help us to also revise a bit better. Okay, so today we will begin by taking a look at the kind of community, or when we say that the Jaina community was structured in a fourfold manner. Okay, so let's take a look. First and foremost, we have monks, then you have the nuns or the religious women, then you have the lay men, and fourth you have the lay women. Okay, so the monks generally are referred to as sadhus, nuns as sadhvis, laymen as Shravakas, and lay women as Shravikas.
Did they give the word nuns or did they give the word sadhus?
No, we have sort of tried to, for our understanding, we have used it. So monks, nuns, in that way, laymen, lay women. Okay, so now we need to we'll take a look at the roles of each as well as the practice and what was the goal finally. Okay, so when it comes to the monks, so first and foremost they were male ascetics who had given up everything, renounced worldly attachments, and they were living a life of strict discipline. So what were the practices that they followed? Obviously, it was necessary for them to follow the 5 vows. Apart from this, they also had to engage in study as well as meditation. And they had to depend on the lay community for their basic needs. So the goal for them was, one was spiritual purity, and also liberation from birth and death. So this is basically with regards to the role that the monks or the sadhus had, what were their practices. That means they had to renounce worldly attachments, live a life of strict discipline, follow the 5 vows, okay, and also depend on the lay community for their basic needs such as food and shelter. And apart from that, the goal was spiritual purity and liberation. Now let's come to the sadhvis. So these are basically the female ascetics. Now they also renounced worldly attachments, and they also followed a path of strict spiritual discipline. That means vows included. So when it came to their life, we see that they lived an ascetic life following the 5 vows. They focused on meditation, scriptural study, as well as they also taught. Once again, we see that they also had to depend on the lay community for their basic needs. So basically, if you look, the roles as well as the practices of both the sadhus and the sadhvis were in a way similar or same, you can say. And of course, the goal also was the same. You had spiritual purity and liberation. Then we have the lay men or the Shravakas, and these were the male householders So in a way, living in the world, managing worldly responsibilities. And now, what were the practice? They had to observe the vows, to the extent that their circumstances in a way permitted. Okay, so for example, we see that they were less stricter in following the vows than the monks. Obviously, we see that when it came to the 5th vow, chastity applied to them also, but in what form? Fidelity. Okay, so there was no compromise with that. But with the other vows, for example, with regards to truth or this, we see that depending on the situation, they were not very strict in that observance. Now, they participate in religious activities. And in a way, they had to also provide for the monks and the nuns, or the sadhus and the sadhvis. So what was the goal? So the goal for them was to live a virtuous life as much as possible. Then also support monastic community, and at the same time also in a way reduce karmic accumulation. That means through your good deeds, you try to do away with all that you have accumulated. And in a way, they also had the goal of progressing towards liberation. And then finally, the Shravikas. Well, we see that they had to adhere to the principles, Jaina principles, when they were fulfilling their social responsibility as well as their domestic responsibilities. So we see that they had to, in a way, also they had some religious activities which they had to follow, including fasting, pilgrimage, prayer, and also we see that they played an important role in upbringing children and helping the monastic community. So, supporting the monastic community was through alms as well as sometimes assistant, going out, helping out, etc. And the aim for them was similar to that of the Shravakas, that is, live a virtuous life, support the monastic community, and therefore make a path towards spiritual liberation. Okay, so this was in a gist the fourfold classification of the Jaina community. So next we can have a look at the interdependence and harmony. So when we look at this fourfold structure, one thing that comes, so what is something that comes to your mind? Now you have seen the fourfold structure, the four divisions in the society. What is it that comes to your mind? Okay, way of life, but more some specific. Yeah, so what does that show us? Collaboration, okay? Any other word for it? There is collaboration, then something to do with mutual support, right? So we see that there was a lot of interdependence. Okay, so that means the sadhus and the sadhvis would depend on the laymen and lay women for the basic needs, alms, etc. Whereas the lay men and women, they would in a way rely on the monks and the nuns for guidance, teaching, okay, spiritual advice, etc. So in a way there was this mutual support as well as a kind of a collaboration. Next, we also see that, is there anything else that comes to our mind when we look at this? we can speak of community cohesion. In a way, what this means is that this structure, the fourfold structure, ensures preservation plus propagation of Jaina principles. In a way, we see that each group contributes in its own way to the preservation as well as propagation of the religion or of the teachings. Okay, so with this being done, we can now focus our attention to the sacred scriptures. So before coming to this, it's important to realize that Mahavira passed the last 30 years of his life as an omniscient Tirthankara. Okay, so as an omniscient teacher, and he died at the age of around 72. And by the time of his death, it is said that there was a large group of people who had embraced this new faith. As we have already seen last time, because of the discontent that was there, okay, because this they wanted to in a way give people fulfillment in their lives, many began to join them. And the close disciples of Mahavira led the movement after his death. So after his death, these close disciples were the one who carried forward the teachings of Mahavira, and as a result of it, we see that Jainism now spreads from the northeast of India to the northwest and even to the south. So I think in Karnataka there is a considerable amount of Jaina community, right? Yes. So yes. So now we'll take a look at their sacred scriptures. Now we see that there are various, in a way, classification of sacred scriptures in Jainism. We see that each of the main sects which are there recognizes its own body of sacred scriptures. So now, can anyone tell which are the two sects that are there in Jainism? Okay, so you have the Shwetambaras and the Digambaras. So first we'll take a look at the main scriptures as follows. Then we'll see how these two sects differ in following the scripture. Okay. So now we see that each sect, followed its own kind of way of interpreting scripture. And most of the Jaina texts are written in Prakrita, which is an early form of Sanskrit. So now, according to the Jaina tradition, it is believed that the canon, okay, so the teachings that we have as of now is as a result of an agreement which took place around 1000 years after Mahavira's death. So it is said that there was a council that was held in Vallabi, which is in Gujarat, current day Gujarat, and it was presided by a monk called Devradhi Samasramana, and his job or his duty was collecting and putting or arranging the sacred texts in written form. So you had a few texts here and there, you had the oral teachings. So it was his, in a way, purpose, his main purpose at this council was to put everything in written form. Okay, so when we speak about their sacred scriptures, we see that it has 6 sections and it contains either 45 or 46 books. So we'll come to that. So what we have to remember is that these 6 sections which are there, each one of them have their own significance, each one of them have their own speciality. So if we take a look a little bit at this council, okay, that happened in Vallabhi, Gujarat, we see that this was a time when Jainism was beginning to establish itself a bit more firmly in the Indian subcontinent. Okay, and as a result we see that there were also a lot of social, political and also religious changes going on. And therefore when there are such changes going on, you also need to adapt, you also need to get in line with the current trend. So therefore we see that this council was very much important. And what was this purpose? Okay, we have said his purpose was collecting and putting the sacred texts in written form. But anyone can tell me why was it important to put everything in a written form? Okay, for reference, good. Can we speak about preservation? Okay. And also standardization, right? For example, if nothing is there in written form, each one can have his own interpretation. There is nothing to go and look. It's easy to manipulate. For example, if you do not have a particular rule book, each one can say, okay, I feel the rule is like that. But when everything is written, you can go back to it and you can then cross check. So therefore this council was very important because of this reason. Okay, and also they wanted to make sure that there was a consistency as well as continuity. So this whole process in a way basically was putting, in simple words, it was converting the oral into written form. To understand in simple words, oral teachings were now converted into a written form. And this process we see that could have introduced certain changes or certain biases because of the interpretations or decisions of the monks that were involved. And therefore we see that this preservation of certain texts over the others reflects the importance or the priority. So that means everything may not have been put, certain things which they considered as important for the preservation, for the standardization and for the continuity of the religion was given importance and put down. So also we can say now that one of the reasons also may have been to address certain issues in the community. So now in the scripture, do we have any texts which addresses current situations in the communities of those times? When you look at the Bible, okay, look at the New Testament, do we have anything where there is something written which has addressed certain problems which were happening during those days in some community? Okay, Acts is one. Then anything else? Okay, Old Testament also we have. But in the New Testament, if we want to narrow down our focus, we have Paul's letters, right? So the Pauline letters also address certain issues of certain communities, whether it be their non-moral way of going about or it being leading them to salvation. Okay, so in this way we see that this council had a lot of significance, especially when it comes to the sacred scriptures of the Jaina religion. So let's take a look at the outline. Okay, so we said that the canon was divided into 6. So first and foremost we have the 12 Angas or the limbs. Then you have the 12 Upangas or secondary limbs or subdivisions. Then you have the Painas or the scattered pieces. Then the 6 Shreya Sutras. Then you have individual texts and the 4 Mula Suttas. Okay, each of these we will deal in little bit of detail. So therefore each of these texts or each of these sections had its own specific purpose in the Jaina religion. We see that these are the canons. So first and foremost, when we look at the Angas, okay, so as we said, the Angas refer to the limbs in a way, if you want to put it in simple words. And these are mostly made up of sermons on various themes, whether they be on non-violence, whether they be on harmony, whether they be on peaceful living. And as we know, there is also a subsection of this which is called as the Upanga. But when we focus on this Angas, the word Anga basically means limbs, but also what has come out from the mouth of the Lord. In this case, Mahavira. And the content here we see is mainly dogmatic and mythological. And a great stress is given on the principle of ahimsa, that is non-violence. So now the general understanding is that after being omniscient, so after gaining knowledge, whatever Mahavira thought, okay, all this was in a way compiled by the Ganadharas in 12 parts. So basically, when we speak about the Ganadharas, one thing we can say that these were the chief disciples of Mahavira. So it is said that Mahavira attained complete knowledge somewhere around the age of 42. After 12 and a half years of ascetic practice. So now we see that as an omniscient being, he somehow had complete knowledge about both temporal as well as the spiritual aspects, that is the worldly as well as the spiritual aspects. He had complete knowledge of the universe as such. So now these Ganadharas, okay, they were the ones who would listen to what Mahavira was telling them. They had to understand and in a way they had to pass it down to others. Also, they in a way systematized. Because we see that when in those days these great teachers taught, they may not have said, okay, today we'll deal with non-violence, okay, tomorrow we'll deal with harmony. These things would have come in between of their sermons. So therefore it was their duty to say that, okay, he spoke about this the other day, today he has spoken about this can be clubbed together. Okay, so when we are teaching to others, we teach it together. So in this way we see that they had a very big role to play. So it is said that he had 11 chief disciples, and among these 11 you had Indra, Buddhi, Gautama was the chief. So out of these 11 you had Indra, Buddhi, Gautama as the chief. So now what are the Angas we have seen? Now we know that there are 12 parts or the 12 Angas. So what is that? We will deal on in the next class. Okay, so thank you.